I'm so excited to introduce you to my big sister in Christ, Allie Little, who is my church's current youth group intern leader. I've known Allie for about 3 years now, and since my move to my current church, Eaton First Church of God, she has been an important mentor who has taken me under her wing and discipled me throughout high school. In this interview, we will discuss how to balance your personal work and home life with ministry opportunities that you are given. Without further ado, here's my interview with my community leader of choice, Allie Little. Thank you so much for joining me today, Allie. I'm really excited to get to talk to you, and I've been looking forward to getting to know your story a little bit more. To begin, I wanted to kind of do what my favorite podcaster, Sadie Robertson, does. She has this podcast called Whoa, That's Good. I'm sure that you've heard of it.
Yes.
But she asks, like, a big question at the beginning to kind of just get it started, which I really love.
Yeah.
But it's kind of intimidating a little bit. But, I guess it's kind of a big question. So the question is, what is one of the best pieces of advice that you've ever been given?
Yeah, and first of all, love her podcast. It is so good. And that is a big question because a lot of people say things and sometimes you don't know it's advice when you hear it, but later you're like, oh, that is good. So something my mom says to me a lot, and this is when I first started getting involved in really started participating in worship. She would say, remember, don't boast about anything in what you did, but remember who you're doing it for. And to a lot of people, that's a very obvious statement, but for me, she knew I'm a people pleaser. She knew I like to just do it good and do it right. And I always take that with me because she knew, she saw right through me and was like, make sure you're doing it for the right reason. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to sound a certain way. Just make sure you're doing it for the Lord. And so every time I sing, not even in a mic, I just whisper to myself, this is for you, God. And I just carry that with me. So
that's so good. That's funny that you say that because I just recently saw a verse about are you doing this to please people? Or are you doing this to please the Lord? Right. And I am a chronic people pleaser as well. And so, it's something that I've had to overcome too.
Yeah, so you get it.
Yes, I get it 100%. So, you work as a youth intern at our church, First Church of God, in Eaton, Ohio. But outside of that, I mean, obviously you have, work that you do outside of that. So can you tell us a little bit about, what you do?
Yeah. So by day, I am a nurse. I work for a home care company right now. But my specialty is pediatric. So I have a big background there, and I've just kind of recently floated over to home health care, and I work from home, and I do more administrative stuff now. I left the bedside a few years ago. So, I work there. It's called Alternate Solutions. It's a home health company, and I went to Kettering College to get my degree, and then I went to Indiana Wesleyan to get my bachelor's. And I've been a nurse now for 12 years. That's embarrassing. And I've been working in home health about 5 years now. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
So like I said earlier, you hold a position at our church as a youth intern. Can you talk about how you ended up in this position and kind of steps it took to get here?
It's wild. I never thought I'd be doing this. I think I told you before that it's funny. God's a funny guy. Yeah. He likes to push you outside your comfort zone, and that's exactly what he did. I was asked probably June or July of this year, so I've officially stepped in August, so I haven't been doing it super long, but I've been working in the youth long enough that I kind of know the ins and outs, so it was kind of easy just to jump in and do it, but there is a whole other layer that you don't know about until you actually get in it. But so Pastor Aaron approached me. He's the one that asked me, and the ministry board kind of said that they had been throwing my name out and just wanted to see if I was interested. So I took some time, prayed about it, because I've never had a job and a half before. I knew that was going to be crazy, but I felt no reason not to. I felt no cons. I felt this crazy pool to do it. And I'll get like, I don't know, we'll get into like a backstory later, I guess, of how, I got here. But, it was just very evident that I was supposed to be doing this, and this was my season to do it. So I did it.
Yeah. I mean, like, God will give you that peace, obviously, when you're supposed to, you know, like when you're walking through a door that he's opened, you'll know, versus when you're trying to force a door open.
It is. It's so crazy.
Right. So can you talk a little bit about why you chose to get involved in youth ministry specifically?
Yeah.
Because I know that you said that you never really imagined yourself like ending up here.
Yeah.
Have you always kind of had an interest in ministry? What's that looked like for you?
It's been kind of a thing coming to fruition my whole life, I think. I'm like a church girl. Like, I'm just a church girl. Like, I love being here. I love doing things for the church. I knew that. I always knew that my whole life, but I didn't know it would be this big of a leadership role. I didn't know I would ever be on staff. I was just always happy to help. Like, that was my thing. I never asked to be put in leadership, but I guess there's a little backstory. But I moved to Michigan, a couple years ago, and at the time it was the right thing to do. I did feel like it was the right thing to do, but in the 6 months I was away, I learned lesson upon lesson. I mean, it was almost like the Lord had to take me away to isolate me, to talk to me. It's almost like how that was supposed to happen. And I think that was the reason I needed to go. And so while I was there, I felt the Lord and heard him, and in a way I have never felt before. And I just knew, like, I'm leveling up, like, in my Christian maturity. I've been to church my whole life. And so you kind of fall into the mindset of, okay, well, I already know, like, all of it. Like, okay. But, like, here I am, like, 34, and I'm still learning things, and I'm still growing, and it was amazing. And it just kind of lit a fire under me, and I was like, okay, this is it. And, like, a month or two before I moved back, the Lord said, I want you to start a girls' Bible study when you get back. I want you to be more involved and more in tune than you ever have been. I just felt all these convictions, and I was like, okay, I'm doing it. And I hate being in front of people. I'm not a teacher. I am not an evangelizer. I am not that, but thank God he uses the ill-equipped to do his work, because that is exactly what I am. You know, like, I don't even know what I'm not theologically based, but I know I have the Lord interwoven in my soul, and that's what I know. And I want to do nothing but see you guys grow in your relationship. I want to do nothing but show you Jesus and to tell you the truth. That's all I want to do. And I think the Lord needed to take me away and say, wake up. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And two of my gifts now that have kind of come up are shepherding and counseling, and I hadn't had that before. And so I think he's kind of manifesting those in me to do this. So I've always been ministry driven, a helper, a server, but the Lord had other plans for me, and I didn't know that until this summer. So
wow.
It's been great. Great.
That's really cool. I mean, I've definitely, as like one of your students, it's been like such a blessing. Like, for us, I can say that from this side of things, that you've stepped into this position and said yes, because I know that saying yes can be scary. I've had that moment as well, and it's just like, in the moment, it's absolutely, like, for me, it was terrifying. You know, it's a lot of like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of responsibility. But ultimately, he's on your side, you know, and he's got you in this position for a reason. And I can say, from a student point of view, that it has been such a blessing having you in this position. So thank you for saying yes to it.
Well, yeah, of course.
So, along with being a youth intern, you are also on the worship team at our church, and I've gotten to kind of work beside you in that as well, which has been so much fun.
Yes.
So obviously that's a lot to
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah.
And so how do you balance that with like your work life and everything
Yeah.
outside of church?
Yeah. It's it is a lot, and that's something I think I'm still figuring out. I don't think but again, I think I have to trust that this is the right season to do all of this. You know, I'm comfortable with worship ministry. I'm comfortable in my job. And I think the Lord's like, you can do one. You can. And it's just something I have to turn over to him daily, because sometimes I do sit there and I get texts from, you know, here at church, like for things, and then I have stuff at work come up, and then, you know, like other things come in. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. And I always worry if I'm like even doing youth group justice, you know, like that's always on my brain. And but I think I just daily have to turn that over and say, Lord, guide me. Mm-hmm. I think that's all I can do at this point before he, you know, takes me to that next step where I feel super comfortable. But right now, that's where I am.
Yeah.
Just I have to hands up and say, tell me what to do.
Yeah. Full surrender. Full surrender.
Full.
Yes. And God works through that discomfort too.
Yeah.
Which is always interesting to look back on, because it's hard to see it in the moment for sure.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, looking back on it, it's definitely like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it might have been busy, but he was working.
Oh,
so
yeah.
So a few more questions.
Yes.
Do you have any advice that you would share with someone who has a passion for ministry and serving others, and how they should go about balancing their time between ministry and their job outside of ministry?
Yeah. There's multi-layers, I feel like, to this. First, I would direct them to a verse in Proverbs. It's Proverbs 16:9. And it says, in his heart, a man plans his course, but the Lord determines his steps. And I think there are so many tips and tricks that the world can provide. But I think there is a mindset and a full transformation where you have to realize it's not your own. And once you do that, you can say yes, and you can... God will provide the compassion and grace that you need to get through that. You know, also not to get burnt out and not to overwork yourself. You know, we need sleep. God doesn't. We need friend time. God doesn't. So make sure that is also fulfilling your life as well. But I think, you know, once you get more mature in your Christian faith, you realize that your steps are already planned. You have nothing to prove. Mm-hmm. You've already been paid for. Your path is already set. And if you fully transform and hand things over, just let God work. And you're going to be amazed, because what he has planned is better than what you can even imagine and handle and do and, you know, plan out yourself. So
right.
That's kind of where I am. I mean, like,
yeah.
And I've seen that, you know, in other people's lives, and even in my life right now, it's still going. Mm-hmm. So it's exciting to just hand it over and see what happens.
Yeah.
Especially for us people who are people pleasers and want to do things right and perfectly. And
absolutely.
So,
yes. So lastly, do you have any advice for someone who has recently felt a call into ministry but doesn't know where to start?
Yes. I would say do it. You just got to do it. Mm-hmm. If you feel the tug, if you feel the stirring, that is the Holy Spirit, and don't ignore it. That is the worst decision you can make, is to ignore that. You know, one of God's most spoken commands is do not fear. And you have to hold on to that trust and that promise. If you don't, that ultimately means you don't trust God. If you're not fully committing to that, it ultimately means you really don't have faith in him. So as long as your heart is there, as long as you're transformed in your mind, your heart, your soul, you will get there and you can handle it. It's really funny. I was watching a podcast actually yesterday, and I don't know if you've heard of her, Dr. Sarita Lyons. She's good. She's so smart, and she's really good. But she kind of alluded to this same exact thing. She said, If you have that churning in your stomach to do something, let God build your character in the deep, in the dark, and in the distance. There's no shame in starting small, because God needs to shape you first. And just like a diamond, when it's ready to be harvested, you will burst from the ground and be ready to run into the light of the Lord. And I was like, yeah,
Wow.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I didn't know diamonds like burst from the ground when they're ready, but it's really cool to like think of even yourself like that. So give God room, make room for him, allow him to shape you and form you into what he wants, and you're not going to fail. Like, what's going to go wrong if he already created you, he already knows you. What's going to hurt if you just say, okay? And it doesn't have to be, an instant big Bible study. It doesn't have to be an instant big evangelism plan. It doesn't have to be like that, but start small and let him form you, like she said, in the deep, in the dark, and in the distance. And all of a sudden, you'll burst forth, ready to go.
Yeah, because, I know I watch a lot of Sadie Robertson podcasts, and she had, I'm sure that you know her, Priscilla Shire.
Oh, yeah.
So they were talking, and they were both kind of talking about their, start into ministry.
Yeah. And
it took, they started with doing small Bible studies, leading small Bible studies with girls.
Yep.
And those seeds that were planted there, that God was working through them there, that then resulted in them speaking at these conferences with thousands and thousands of people and writing these books that are reaching millions of people. And so, God is going to prepare you at each step of the way for what he wants you to do next.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
So saying yes to that, those little things, is so important.
Oh, for sure.
And it is so cool looking back to see the fruit that's come from all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm still a baby in this whole thing. I'm such a rookie, but like I said, all I know is what the Lord says to me and what I'm feeling. And that's what I'm going to go off of, because that's ultimately truth, and that's ultimately what I trust. So that's what I got.
That's so good. That's so good. Thank you so much for letting me do this.
Thank you.
It's been so good talking to you.
Well, it's been amazing watching you even these past few months, honestly, since the school year started, and you're gonna be a diamond that's gonna burst forth, and no one's ready for it. So I'm excited to see what you do and where you go, and I'm always cheering you on and holding you in my heart and in my prayers. So
thank you so much.
Yeah, don't forget about us here in Eaton.
When
you go become a superstar.
Oh, whatever.
You are. It's amazing. I love watching you guys. So, thanks for thinking.
Thank you so much. We love you.
Yeah, I love you guys.
And if you've been forgiven,